Good afternoon. I'm Bob Ross from Ross Estate Planning. I'm an attorney here in Sturgeon Bay. I've been practicing for over 44 years and thoroughly enjoying it. We're a little different. Estate planning is all that we do. We're not divorce lawyers or bankruptcy lawyers, but estate planning is what we do. And Jane Susie has been with me for about 3 years now, but she's got a wealth of experience that she has brought to us. So we are glad to be the attorneys chatting with you this afternoon.
Sounds good. We're going to talk to you today about the 3 things that we think need to be done right now. 3 things that you should do, and we're going to add a 4th one just for a little bonus. So we're going to talk to you today about getting organized, about durable financial general powers of attorney. We're going to talk to you about healthcare directives, and then we're going to throw in a little bonus with some grab and go folders. Bob, you want to get us started?
Sure. Yeah, before we get too far, we want to let you know that we're happy to answer questions. Now, we know that's a little hard electronically, so if you would email any questions you have to Kathy at rossestateplanning.com, and we will make sure that we get back to you and answer those questions. Also, if there's some information that we mentioned today and you would like copies of anything that we're talking about, again, email Kathy at Ross Estate Planning, and we'll be happy to send that information to you.
Now it's Kathy with a C, C-A-T-H-Y, at rossestateplanning.com.
So let's get started. So what are the things that are important that you need to be aware of in the step number 1? So remember, step number 1 is gather, get organized. And so what you want to have is list of advisors and where all your assets are. Because if you've moved here to Door County, you probably have assets or advisors in other locations, or you've come here and your kids don't live here and they don't know who your advisors are or where your important documents are. So you really need to let everybody know where those things are.
So we want to talk about, when we're talking about assets or lists, we want to talk about who's your life insurance with, who does your home, your car insurance, who is your CPA, who is your attorney, what are the numbers for people that they can reach out to make it as easy as possible. Do you have a safe? Who knows how to get into it? Hopefully more than just you. We need to know how to get into your safe if there's things in there that we're going to need.
Or if you have a safety deposit box. This day and age when you can't get into the bank, we need to know where that is. And this is a safety deposit box key, color-coded for a lot of us older folks. Where is that key? If you can't find the key, you just bought the box.
When we're talking about getting organized and we're talking about making these lists of things, oftentimes the response that we get from people is, oh my gosh, I don't know where all that is, or oh my gosh, that's a lot of stuff to dig through or to try and sort out. And I guess what we want to get across is, if that's an overwhelming chore for you, just think how it's going to be if you're not there and you're not able to help your loved ones to find all those things or figure out where everything is.
Yeah, when folks have come in to meet with me, frequently they have said, this is the first time we have gathered everything and we know where things are. Very important. And so let's talk about, how do you gather information? Well, one of the things that we're starting to recommend today is have a family meeting. Get everybody together. Now, in this day and age of kids being in other parts of the country, and also because travel today because of COVID is hard, do it electronically. Have Zoom meetings, have FaceTime meetings, or even just conference calls. But get the family together so that they know where things are and who are the important people in your life.
And if you're going to get things together for people, it's a good idea to talk with your advisors. It's time to meet up with advisors, not just tax time, but let's go talk with your advisors. Let's try to consolidate some of your accounts. If you moved here or you sometimes winter other places and you're getting 1099s from 5 different sources because you've never consolidated, now would be a really good time to do that. Maybe you've either got a little bit of extra time because of COVID, or maybe now you're starting to realize how important it might be. So get those things together, talk with your advisors, check on your beneficiary designations with your accounts, and then see if there's a way that you can reduce how many 1099s you're going to get at the end of the year. It's kind of good for everybody.
You bet. And if you have an estate plan, congratulations. That's wonderful. But if it's more than a few years old, it really is out of date, even if we did it, and needs to be updated because the rules have changed. The Secure Act was passed last Christmas. Congress passed it on the 18th of December. The President signed it on the 19th of December, and it went into effect January 1. Didn't give us much lead time, but it made some very major changes in planning documents and planning opportunities and things that we need to either correct, change, or fix.
And if you have estate planning documents, do you know where they are? Do you know what they say? Ross Estate Planning, one of the things that we do that's a little different from other places is we will review your plan with you at no obligation and no cost. It doesn't matter if we did it or if somebody else did it. If we did do it, we want to make sure you remember what we talked about at the time that we did it and that it's still up to date. But if it's somebody else's, let us take a look at it. Let us tell you what we think it says and maybe give you some ideas of some new ideas, things to say.
And in this day and age, passwords. What are your passwords? Do you have them written down on a list somewhere? Or like a good friend of mine, he says, well, I don't worry about my passwords. I have them all written down and they're taped to my computer. I think that's really safe. There's a wonderful service that you can use, and I use a service called LastPass. That's where I save all of my passwords. And all I need to do is remember that one password, and then I have access to all of my passwords. Because if you don't know what your passwords are and something happens, we cannot get that information.
The other thing is that we're going to talk about who can make decisions for you, and one of the things that we need to make sure is that you've given somebody the ability to use your passwords. Just because you have your husband's password or your daughter's password doesn't mean that you have the ability to use it, and if there's something that happens to them, if somebody dies, then those accounts can be blocked off to you whether you have the password or not. We have to give you authority to actually use them.
Yeah, and one of the greatest gifts you can give to your family is being organized. In this day and age, it's just so much more important that when somebody becomes ill or passes on, if we don't know where things are, we become detectives, and it takes a long time for us to try and get the estate organized and managed and distributed to the folks that are important to you.
With COVID going on, we don't want you to think that we're being morbid. Getting organized is not about being morbid, it's about being prepared. And being prepared, being organized, like Bob said, is just the greatest gift that you can have out there for your loved ones.
So let's now talk about the second most important document, and it's really the most important document in any estate plan, and that's a good financial power of attorney. When I first started in practice, the powers of attorney were about a quarter paragraph long. Now they're 27 pages long because everybody wants something different, everybody requires something different, and it's really important that a good financial power of attorney be reviewed and updated. And if we did the power of attorney and it's more than a few years old, because of all the rule changes, it needs to be updated. The Secure Act made a wealth of changes. There's a whole new set of rules that deals with passwords that we need to address. And if you've had a power of attorney done by somebody who's not a good long-term care elder law attorney like Jane is, it will not let us do all the things that we need to do if you become incapacitated.
So when we say a financial power of attorney, some people call it a durable power of attorney, some people call it a general power of attorney. It kind of is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not just about financial aspects of your estate. What you should distinguish it from is healthcare. So anything that does not have to do with making healthcare decisions is what we want to try and cover in your durable or general or financial power of attorney. If you've already got one, have you looked at it lately? Does it list the people that you still want making those decisions?
And what do you do if you don't have one? Then you become very good friends with the judge, and you are in a guardianship. And if you think one lawyer is expensive, wait till you have two lawyers and a doctor. And who wants to stand in front of the judge and say mom or dad is incapacitated? It's just not pleasant. So make sure that you have a written financial power of attorney, and you can find it.
This is an area too where we often get questions about who should we appoint in that position. And oftentimes when they're talking through it to us, they start at the top of the birth order. Well, I don't know if your siblings or your kids are like mine. We all grew up in the same house, but we're all completely different. Birth order doesn't necessarily mean that's the right person to have in the right place. You know your players, and you shouldn't worry about who's going to be offended. You should worry about who's going to be able to manage the decisions that you're asking them to make. And don't forget to tell them. The worst surprise you want to get is, surprise, you're my power of attorney and we've never had a discussion about this. Go take care of my finances, right?
Yeah. And you really want to look at the kids. Who balances the checkbook? Who understands financial statements? That's the person you want to name as the financial power of attorney. And so folks are always asking us, well, can I name more than one on a financial power? And the answer is yes, you can have decision by committee. I will use my own family as an example. I'm the oldest, there's 6 kids. The 3 brothers have been named as a committee to do things and take care of finances for mom. And we've set it up so that any one of the 3 of us can sign. Now, does that require that we talk to each other? You bet it does, because there better be some good communication. We each need to know what's going on, who's doing what, who's signing what. And we've kind of assigned tasks. Well, you'll take care of the brokerage account, one will take care of the rentals, one will talk to the hospitals and doctors so that all those bills get paid. So you can do that.
So if we move along from talking about who's going to make those decisions and help you handle those affairs that are not health related, the next topic we want to talk to you about is reviewing or making sure that you have good healthcare directives. In our office, we break those down into 3 parts. We're going to have a HIPAA consent, who has access. We're going to have the actual healthcare power, who can make decisions. And then we're also going to have a living will, which talks about specific decisions in specific situations.
You bet. So when you think about a HIPAA consent, a lot of folks are surprised when they sit down with me, husbands and wives especially, and say, well, we're married. Obviously, you wives can get information about your husbands, because we guys are terrible patients. We only go to the doctor when you make us go, and then when we come back and you say, well, what did the doctor say? I don't remember. And so you call up the doctor and say, what'd you tell my husband? And unfortunately, what's the doctor going to say? I can't talk to you. Well, we're married. And the doctor will very politely say, so? You know, marriage does not authorize the release of private medical information. So you really need to get that HIPAA consent form in place.
Also, think about the fact that a HIPAA can be a long list of people that you want to be able to call in and say, what room is mom in? What's mom's condition? Or you can make it a really compact list that you think would be the start of a good calling chain. So you list the children that you have, and you expect, and you've talked to them about the fact that you want them to call the people that you would like them to have informed.
Jane, you've got kids that are gonna be 18 soon. What do we do in that case?
Well, that's an interesting thought, because if you have children that are 18, 19, 20 who are going off to college, and although college is kind of different these days and who's going and who's not, but when your kids are over the age of 18, they're adults, and you don't automatically, as their parent, get the right to have access to either their healthcare information or their financial information. So a HIPAA consent that says it's okay for the school health services to talk to you when they call and say, are you the insurer for this child? And you say, yes, why? And they say, we can't tell you. It would be awfully nice if you had something in place ahead of time in our healthcare directives that can say, it's okay for you to talk to my mom, and it's okay for mom to help make decisions for me.
Well, Jane, we also have this form called ICE. What is that?
So ICE is just an idea that we would like to convey to say to you, somewhere along the way, you need to have it documented who it is that you want called in case of emergency. In case of emergency is ICE. We have a form that we're happy to provide you. We recommend that you write down who to call and you put it in your glove box, or if you live alone or are an elderly couple, my mother's is on her refrigerator, which I have to say kind of mortifies her a little bit, but the last time that EMTs were called to her house, they saw it, it was very catchy, and my sister beat them to the hospital. So ICE, make it on your phone if you have that ability, but also something in writing. Put it in your glove box, put it in your suitcase, keep one with you at your employer if you have one, or give one to your kids.
So we also have something we call conversation starters. And you can ask us for those forms. It helps you just sit down and talk about not only each other, husband and wife, but with the kids and with your doctor. What do you want? What do you not want? A good long list, so that when that time comes and those tough decisions, and they are tough, the only way you can make those decisions easy is put it in writing so that the family can make the decisions you want, not the decisions they want.
They're not the most fun conversations to have, right? And we're not going to ask you to try and think of every situation that could be out there and how you would want it to be handled. But we're going to give you a little bit of some multiple choices. If this was how you were, how would you feel, strongly or not so strongly about that? And it just helps give guidance to those people who are making decisions for you.
Yeah. If you've done a healthcare power, congratulations. That's great. But if it's more than a few years old, has there been any changes in your life? Have you retired? Has somebody passed on? Have you changed opinions of what you want done? My mom changed her mind routinely, and it was nice to sit down with her and say, well, Mom, what is it you want done now? And so it was very helpful to have those conversations.
So a HIPAA consent that we talked about a minute ago is going to just identify those people that you don't mind having access to your information. What we're going to move on to now is the actual healthcare power. So who are you actually going to empower to make those decisions for you? Not just the first person, but then some other people. And Bob, is this a case where we again can have some committees so that nobody is just one person burdened with this?
Yeah, you can't have decision by committee on healthcare powers. You can name one and then backups. And something that we do in our healthcare powers is those folks that you've named as backups, we ask them to talk to each other, so that the person that has to make those decisions, it's a little easier when they have some backup and support. But it's also, you want to think about, in my family, my youngest sister is the person my mom would talk to every day. But my little sister was not on my mom's healthcare power, because we know she could not make those tough decisions for Mom. She was on the HIPAA consent so that she could get information, but we did not ask her to make those tough decisions for Mom. And so you really want to think about, who do you name? And that's, along with our conversation starters, we have we call decision tree. Things to think about when you're naming your healthcare agents. And so you can ask us for that form. We'd be glad to send that out to you.
And it may be that the person who's just perfect to make your financial decisions or handle your financial matters is just not the person to make your healthcare decisions. And it doesn't mean that they love you any less or that they love you any more. It just means that that's in their skill set better. And it's not just a matter of who can make decisions, and they're hopefully the decisions you want and not what that person wants, but also who can be an advocate for you? Who's the one who's going to press when something needs to be done and you're not getting all the information or the treatment that you had asked for? Who's going to be the advocate for you? Because that's the person that you want to name on your healthcare power.
Sure, because every medical facility has a process. And if you fall outside that process, you want to make sure that you have somebody who can advocate for what it is that you want.
In this day and age, too, of COVID, we've found that there are lots of pre-printed healthcare powers of attorneys out there that ask you to make decisions beforehand. So when you sign it, you're checking a box. I always want this, I never want that. Unfortunately, some of those right now are saying, I never want to be on a ventilator, I never want to be on a respirator, because that's not, COVID is not what people were thinking when they did that. We would like it to be something that's more general, that gives somebody that you trust explicitly all of the power to adapt to the situation that you're in, and you're not binding their hands by saying, I always want this, in a situation where they know that's not what you would really have wanted.
So Jane, we've got these healthcare powers. What do we do with them? Where do we keep them?
Well, we like to say you're going to give your healthcare powers out like candy, okay? When you come through us, we're going to give you multiple sets of your healthcare directives, the HIPAA, the healthcare power, and the living will, and we want you to give them to the agents that you've listed. We want you to put one in your glove box, in your suitcase when you travel, one to your primary care physician, and if you're seeing other specialists, we want them to all have copies. Keep a list, though, of where you're sending those out so that if you ever do make a change, you know where to go back and give the new copies to.
So let's talk about, Jane, our bonus item, the grab and go folder. There are really two different kinds of emergencies that we're talking about. What's the first one?
Well, the medical emergency is the first one that we'd like you to have a grab and go folder for. And really, grab and go is just our made up word for it, or our what we assign to that. And all we're wanting is for you to have particular documents in copy form, not the originals, one that is ready for someone to grab if they're running off to the hospital with you, but one that's also outside of your house in case there is a disaster in your house and you need those documents. So we first talk about a medical grab and go. What we want to see is we want to see copies of your insurance cards front and back. If you're on Medicare, if you have Part A, Part B, any supplements, we want copies of those front and back. Think about the things that you would need to present if you were being admitted into a hospital. A copy of your driver's license, a copy of your list of your medications, a list of allergies, a list of the doctors, the important people, a copy of the healthcare directives that we've just provided for you, right? We want to see a copy of your driver's license in there, and it's something that isn't always on the top of people's minds, but if you are married and you have a medical emergency, we'd really like a copy of your marriage license to be in there. If we need to try and get Social Security transferred over to a surviving spouse and no one can find your marriage license, we're going to have a big trouble getting that done for you.
And this is tougher for you ladies. You know, for us guys, our Social Security card has our name on it today. But you ladies have been married, maybe divorced, maybe widowed, remarried, and so you're going to have multiple names. So you need all of those documents. And I've had more than one lady come into me and say, I burned that old marriage license. Well, we may need to find it. And we're running into that today even more so if you're going to get the driver's license, that is the new identity card. You ladies need all of that information. You know, I'm just going to apply now for my new identity driver's license, and they said I needed my Social Security card. Well, I found everybody's card but mine. So I had to go apply for it. And so I called Social Security. I said, what do I need to do? They said, well, you need to send in your driver's license. I said, can I come there and show it to you? No, we don't work in the office anymore. We're all working remotely. So you have to send your driver's license. I said, listen, this does not make sense. I'm not going to send you my driver's license unless you're going to drive with me if I ever get stopped. But that's some of the crazy rules we're having to deal with. So you need to figure that stuff out. So have that information. And on the Social Security card, they don't want a copy. They need the original.
Now let's make it clear though that when we're talking about you preparing a grab and go, we're not asking you to put a copy of your Social Security card in there. We've already asked you for your driver's license, and we're not trying to make something that would make it absolutely easy for a identity theft to take off with your grab and go package. So Social Security is something that copies should be somewhere that someone knows where to find, but we don't necessarily want them in your grab and go. The last thing that we want you to think about for your medical grab and go is, do you have long-term care insurance? Do you have a policy that's going to pay something or everything towards your stay in a nursing home? Because that's something that your kids may not know about, and even if they do, they may not know where to find it. So that's for a medical emergency. What are we going to do for a natural disaster
Sure.
or other?
So little things like your birth certificate. You may need to prove that you are alive. If you're a veteran, your DD-214 file, the most important document. And if you were a veteran that suffered the fire loss, I believe in St. Louis or Kansas City, one of the major veterans facilities burnt up, all those veterans records are gone. So the more you can get prepared ahead of time and ready for that, the better.
So in your emergency grab and go, for if it's not a medical necessarily emergency, but it's just, let's say you've had a fire or you've been evacuated because of a hurricane and you're in Florida and all your documents are here in Door County, we'd like you to have a copy of your estate plan. We'd like you to have all the things that we already talked about being in your medical grab and go, but then add these other things like your records for your military.
Your passport. And a copy of
your
that.
passport, a copy of the front of your credit cards in case you need to report them missing. And then just make sure that somebody has that. Now, grab and go doesn't necessarily mean you've got an actual folder. It could be that you've given your kids a jump drive or another form of electronic means of pulling these things up. And that's really what we're looking for. Not to be in a situation where you just suddenly don't have access to or can never get back to copies of all of these important things.
So we really want to thank you for spending some time with us today. It's important, if you've got questions, again, email Kathy at rossestateplanning.com, and that we can either answer those questions or get you copies of any of the information or forms that we've talked about today.
You can also go through ADRC. What a resource you have here. ADRC would be happy to get you in touch with us or to try and relay information that we need to get to you. So we thank ADRC for the opportunity to talk with you today, and we hope that we have enlightened you a little bit, and that we'll see you soon if you've got some questions.
Thank you.